Hi there, I'm Ben Shirk with Shirk Photography and Game Changer Sports Templates. Welcome to my studio. If you don't know me, I create lots of composites. Compositing is what I do, and I have clients that travel from all over the country to come to my studio for me to create amazing composites for them. So today, I want to start off going over a variety of different Photoshop techniques, but we're going to start off at the very beginning. Most tutorials kind of assume that you have some idea or have a good foundation. I don't want to assume that. I'm going to start you off at the very beginning, make sure all your palettes are set up, all your Photoshop controls and stuff are set up on your screen perfectly, so that as you're working in compositing, you're not struggling to find those different tools or access the different palettes. It's all there perfectly for you, so you can easily grab that and get back to work compositing and not struggling. So let's start off with setting up the tools and the presets and the palettes here. So let's get into that and see what we can do. So let's take a look into Photoshop and get you oriented and to get everything set up the way I like it and how I set up my Photoshop. So to start off with, there's a big mess of stuff over to the right side when you first open Photoshop. There's a lot of confusing things going on there. So I tend to reduce all that or make it go away. So I'm going to drag stuff off and just start shutting things down for now. Get everything pretty much shut down and start over with the way I like it. So I'm going to have under my windows, I'm going to bring up my layers, the first thing I want, and make sure I just have the layers. So there's a few different things over here. So I'm going to grab my layers and pull them off over here. So that's my layers palette. You can kind of see how I clicked on that little double arrows. I don't want these other ones though, so I'm going to again shut these down. I just want my layers open. So I'm going to have my layers up here. I'm going to put it up to the right corner here. And then I'm going to pull it down so that if I have a lot of layers, I can see them all, or a bunch of them at least. Then I'm going to go up to my actions and add my actions into that. And if they're clicked on something else, so I have actions and history in there, I'm going to pull it off for now. And then place it up into there. Grab my history also. I'm going to want my history in there. So also I want my styles. I like to have my styles up. This is something that some people don't use a lot of, but I find them very useful, especially with text. So we'll talk about styles eventually here, but I'm going to put them into my palettes up there. And I don't want any of this stuff, so I'm going to shut that down. And then I'm also going to look into my characters. This is for my type. I'm going to drag my characters off the side and put it up into there. I'll shut the rest of those down. So I have my layers, actions, history, styles, character. And the last one I'm going to add to that is my libraries. Libraries is another one that some people don't use to the best of their abilities, but I have some cool stuff I'm going to teach you with that too eventually. These are the ones that I always have up on the right side of my screen here so that I can easily access and the things I use. Typically, there's very seldom do I go into the other things over here as far as shapes or swatches. It's just not in my workflow. So these are the things that I use right here. I also will bring in my toolbar and move it off to the right side here. So everything's on my right side. I'm right-handed, so it's easy for me to access that on my right side. If you're left-handed, you may want them on your left side. So let me talk a little bit more about my setup in my screen here. So this is a full screen here of my Photoshop, and this is exactly how every time I open Photoshop, this is how it looks for me. If you're using a small laptop or something like that, your screen is very small and it's a little bit harder to work on images, honestly, for me, and see them well and see all the small details. So I like a very large screen to work on. I have a 30-inch flat screen here that I'm working on, and then I have dual monitors. So I have a lot of times I have my images I'm actually grabbing from, my stock images or my client images off to the left screen, and then my Photoshop off to the right, so I can drag stuff in and back and forth. It just helps me to stay decluttered and have this solely designated to Photoshop, while the left screen is all my folders and palettes and everything else that I can need. So now that we have our palette set up and our screen set up, let's talk about these tools. This toolbar here. There are a variety of different tools within this, and Photoshop has lots of different options, and there are so many ways to do things in Photoshop that it can be very confusing. So I'm going to go over some of the basic tools of Photoshop and show you how to use them and set them up. So on this toolbar, there are a variety of different tools, as I mentioned. And one cool thing is that many of these tools have a little box that will pop up and it'll say learn how also on them. So you can learn a little bit more about them if you're not sure how to use it or the different controls. This is all in Photoshop CC. So let's start off at the top here. This is the move tool. The quick key is V. So anytime I hit V, it's going to automatically navigate that. So instead of moving my brush over and clicking on this and taking the time to move all the way back and forth across the screen, which is going to add a lot of time to your composites, I'm simply going to hit V and it automatically goes to that. So let me actually bring up my quick key guide to show you. These are my most commonly used quick keys. These are ones that you should certainly know for sure. All of these have quick keys to them, but for example, the move tool you're going to use all the time. You should know that that is V. And then while you're working on a document, instead of moving all the way over to the right side, clicking on it and coming all the way back, which doesn't seem to take a long time, but if you're doing this 100 or 1,000 times a document, it's going to add up. So instead, just know that your move tool is V. Anytime you want to use it, just hit V. If you want to use your marquee tool, which is the next one down, that's M. That's going to draw a square or circle box for you. My magic wand tool, which is this one, is W. So I can hit W and it automatically navigates to that. I did skip over one. I skipped over the lasso tool, which is not one I use quite as often. I use it a lot, but not nearly as much as the move tool or the magic wand tool and things like that. So let's back to this here. The marquee tool is M. The magic wand tool is W. Brush tool is B. I use my brush tool. You're going to use your brush tool all the time. Never ever take the time to go over here and click on it. Instead, just hit B. It's way faster. My stamp tool is S, or cloning tool. It will clone things out is S. Erase is E. My dodge tool for dodge and burn is O. One unique thing about it, when I hit O, this is my dodge tool and it can lighten things up. If I want to burn things down, instead of going over here to my dodge and burn tool, navigating down and hitting the drop down box, that takes a long time. I'm just going to hold Alt Option down when I'm on that tool and it will automatically burn instead. T is for my type tool, my hand tool, which is useful when you're zoomed way in and need to go to a different part of the document. Instead of navigating down to my hand tool over here, I'm going to hold spacebar. That's automatically going to navigate that. And when I let off, it's going to go back to whatever tool I was just on. So for example, I was on my dodge tool. So I hold spacebar down, moves, let go, it goes back to my dodge tool. And then for zoom, Z is my zoom tool. And then to zoom out, I'm going to hold Alt Option down. It's going to do the opposite. I'm going to zoom out. So zoom in, zoom out. So these are my most commonly used quick keys. Use them all the time. There's lots of other ones within here, but some of these I don't use as much. So I don't use the blur tool very often. I don't use the gradient tool very often, things like that. These are very commonly used when I'm compositing. So I know this isn't very graphically beautiful and stimulating right now, but I want to get you set up on the very basics of the compositing and make sure you know all the ins and outs so that when you do start compositing, things are going to be easy to navigate to, and you're not thinking about how to get to the tools, you're just thinking about how to make your composite better. So taking a little bit of time right now will certainly help you in the end. Now my next lesson is going to be setting up these different tools to make sure that they're ready for compositing use and to kind of show you the ins and outs of some of these specific tools and how to use them the best. So I know this isn't very graphically stimulating right now, but the key is to take the time at the beginning to set up everything perfectly so that when you're getting into composites later on, you're not struggling to find things. So next, I want to take some time in the next lesson to go over the different tools. And within a couple of those tools, there's some settings I want to make sure are set for you so that you're not struggling and trying to figure out why they're not working or what's not happening with them. So looking forward to showing you the next lesson.